But for performance marketing, the commercial side of things is the backbone of everything. This is the B2B Performance Marketing Podcast by Webmarketer, here to help you make the right moves with your B2B advertising. No spin, no smoke and mirrors, just honest insights from the advertising front line.
Welcome back. Now, ahead of this episode, me and Lou were talking, and I think we were talking about something that often happens to marketers, and that's when someone asks you, so what is it that you actually do? And I know I'm guilty of it, but I'll often give an easy answer, something like, I do marketing, or, on Google, when you do a search and you see the ads at the top, we create those for our clients. But if we actually wanted to give a more thorough answer and answer the question truthfully, we'd probably be there for the rest of the evening. And I think that goes for every marketer, because marketing isn't just one thing, and it's gotten so much more complex over time due to the amount of hats that a marketer has to wear. And that's what we want to talk through today.
Yeah, so I remember back to my first ever job in marketing, and I was working on an in-house team for a B2B IT component wholesaler. And when I think about it, probably 85% of my time was dedicated to like sales support stuff. So product spec sheets, email blasts, presentations for salespeople. And fast forwarding to now, when I'm doing 100% performance marketing, I really struggle to understand how all of the different skills that go into that would actually fit into the 15% of the time that was left.
And speaking to clients, I think this is still an issue. They are stretched so thin that they just can't do everything. And usually this is the reason that they bring an agency on board. So to show in-house marketers some love, we wanted to do a bit of an exercise. And that was, if we were to be in their shoes and we only had 15% of our time to dedicate to performance marketing, what are some of the skills that we'd focus on and why?
Okay, so let's start with technical, and appreciate this is a bit of a broad one, but there's lots of different technical skills that goes into performance marketing. So, Zapier and automation, Google Tag Manager and conversion tracking and Google Analytics setups, advertising, channel setups, campaign structure, things like that. In my mind, and I don't know if you agree, Maelien, and I'm kind of killing my darlings a little bit here because I love Google Tag Manager. I love setting up conversion tracking. But I actually think that the project-based stuff, the kind of one and done, I don't think that I would personally choose to allocate my time to that because it's so complex and it's such a steep learning curve that you're better off bringing in an expert to do that. But then on the actual ad platform side of things, so, setting up ad accounts, learning how to structure things properly, you can get a lot of mileage from that side of things. So I do think that taking the time to learn how the ad accounts work and all of the different settings and areas within there, I do think that that's important to allocate time to.
I think I agree. I almost see it as from the perspective of, is it a one and done activity, or is it something that you can keep coming back to and keep getting value from? So Google Tag Manager, yes, it's complex, but often it's done once and it's fixed for a long time. Sometimes there are issues, but it's not something you're going to come back to every day, every week to look at.
So the next one that I'd kind of put on the table is creative, copywriting, images, video. You can get a lot out of creative. Changes to copy, changes to images, new images like video, all of that is stuff that really moves the needle. But I guess it depends on the person. I have a creative background. I have a graphic design degree, but I'm very slow at design. And I've moved into marketing and into analytics because my design skills aren't as good as they should be. So I would advocate that if you have a design flair and you have a creative aptitude, then there's a huge amount of value to be had from the creative skills. But if you don't have that creative aptitude and you're more logical or analytical, I think it would be too much of a learning curve. It would be too much of an ask to focus on that to get a good amount of value in return.
I definitely see where you're coming from. I think in terms of creativity, that's almost a moat at the moment versus AI as well. If you're creative, you stand out against that average. And so you've got a unique ability that's going to set you apart and give you outweighted returns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the next one is like, I think it should be analytics, so an analytical skill set. For me, this is like the flip reverse of creative. So I would imagine that people would fall into one of two camps, so creative or analytical. And if you're more creative leaning, then I would put your effort into that because you can iterate on creativity. Or if you're analytical, well, you can analyze data and you can improve performance through the data.
I definitely agree. I think for me, I have a personal preference for analytical. I think there's a huge strength to be had here because you can quickly identify the things that are working and the things that aren't, and do more of the things that are working and cut the things that aren't. And it's usually really plain to see in the data if you are analytical minded.
Then next, I think commercial skill set is probably a good one to talk through. So knowing how a business works, knowing about the profitability, knowing about the quality of leads and things like that. Like for me, that is a non-negotiable because I think without that commercial knowledge, like that's almost a driver behind what you do. And I'm talking about a performance marketing specific context here because there's obviously value in other fields of marketing to focus on the storytelling and the emotional engagement where the commercial side isn't as important. But for performance marketing, the commercial side of things is the backbone of everything.
The thing I find really useful with the commercial side of things is without that commercial piece, you are almost looking into a fog and you don't have a clear picture, but you're making decisions based on that. So you might be getting tons of leads through, and to you that looks brilliant, like the volume's great, but actually they're not turning into business because you haven't got a focus on the commercials. So as soon as you start tapping into that commercial aspect, it unlocks this entire new perspective on things, and you see that actually things can be done a lot differently. So again, another solid skill, especially if you like your numbers and you like kind of thinking strategically.
Yeah, and I think what you said there, Miley, it basically underpins the point I was trying to make, which is if you develop that commercial skill set, then you start to learn not to take the advertising data at face value because that's really dangerous. Like if you're looking at the data and you're saying, okay, well, the advertising data is telling me this, so this must be right. As soon as you put like a commercial overlay over the top, well, you start to realize that the business level of things is the most important and the ads level of things are just kind of like a reflection on what's happening. So you start to go, okay, well, I'll take that as truth. I don't 100% believe this, but this is useful as a guide. Like it really starts to shape how you interpret the upstream data.
I think it's almost a bit of an antidote for busyness as well for yourself, because you can look at what things are generating revenue, but also for the sales team, because instead of generating 100 leads to get one sales qualified lead that may or may not turn into a customer, you're focusing that in on the leads that are most likely to turn into sales, most likely to turn into customers. And so it actually helps with that limited time that you have, but it also is quite considerate of other people as well. The next one is storytelling. And I think this is really undervalued. Storytelling is at the center of everything. The people that we listen to are the people that tell great stories or can turn everyday events into something that is captivating. And that means it stands out. And in B2B advertising, that's really what you want to do. You want to stand out. You want people to listen to you and hear you. So the people that have a natural ability to be able to tell great stories should really double down on that, because that's going to help you stand out and get better results.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a few different angles of storytelling as well, or for me there is anyway. There's the one that you mentioned, Miley, which is, creative storytelling. It's a very advanced skill. You're kind of playing with subtext there, implying meaning and taking people on a journey and trying to elicit emotion. But I think there's also like storytelling and communication as well. So, for example, rather than sharing a table of data, really going into that data, pulling out the insights, and really thinking about the person receiving that data. Like, how can you build a picture of what that data is saying, and what are you going to do next? It's about really thinking about the person that you're speaking to, whether in reports, in data insights, through presentations, whatever it is, and building a narrative that helps them understand the point that you're trying to make and helps to bring them on the journey with you. So if you're getting people disagreeing with you all the time, well, chances are you're probably not positioning what you're saying well enough. Whereas if you get people asking follow-on questions, chances are you've struck upon something that who you're speaking to is interested in, and you can start to build on those insights, and you can actually build some great action and strategies off the back of that. So the next one's a little bit out of the mold of the others. It's CRO, so conversion rate optimization, which is how you improve landing pages and user journeys to make your ads generate more leads, better quality leads, or both of them together. This is a really, really, really important skill because it forces you to know more about your audience, about your customers, their challenges, their desires, and it teaches you so much about all of that, which can then be fed back into your campaigns, your targeting, your communication, your sales process, so much different stuff. Also, if you have the best ad setup in the world and you have a terrible landing page, you're still not going to generate leads. So having CRO as a skill is going to make sure that you've got both sides of the coin in play.
I think in terms of CRO as well, you can get huge improvements, especially if you think about this versus maybe the incremental improvements you could get from ads. So in ads, you could tweak some copy or you could make some changes and you'd get improvements. But if you were to do those same improvements on a landing page, you could potentially get 2 times or more improvements in some cases, which means you're going to get double the leads. You're potentially going to get twice as many customers. And so the wins you can get from conversion rate optimization is huge. And it's also one of those kind of core skills that feeds from multiple different areas, and so you'll naturally learn other areas as well. And so this can be a solid one if you almost want a broad breadth of exposure and also to get really great results from the changes that you make.
So that feels like a natural place to start wrapping up. I think, kind of talking through that with you, Miley, the thing that stands out to me is that I would have things that I would naturally lean to and things that I would naturally avoid. So what I would choose to put my attention and my time into, it's going to be a different mix to what you might do yourself. And that's fine. Different people have skill sets. Also, different times and different phases of marketing call for different skill sets as well. So I think the main overarching point that comes out of this is that we couldn't do it all. And kind of focusing on a small subset of these skills and leaning into what you're strongest at and also into what's going to move the needle the most, that's going to be the strongest way forward.
As you were speaking about it, I was thinking about almost the stories that I read and how if it was the hero in a story, the skills laid out there are almost like your weapons of choice. But you can't become an expert at all of them. So figure out the ones that make the most sense for you and then just dive deep into those, because the skills that are going to have the most impact depends on how well you're going to use them.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. If you try and be an expert at all of them, you start to get a hairline like this.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you found this useful, please subscribe or leave us a review. Every single one helps us out loads and we really appreciate it. And if you also have a challenge that you want to tackle, then head to webmarketeruk.com/topic and let us know what that challenge is and we might tackle it in a future episode. Thank you for listening.